The rain struck Ravenna Thorne's face like tiny needles as she ran toward the towering glass building, her soaked backpack, containing everything she still owned, weighing her down. 3 nights on Chicago's streets had taught her to recognize sanctuary when she saw it. The Blackwood Tower lobby lights glowed like a beacon through the downpour. She slipped through the revolving door, her breath catching as warmth enveloped her. The security desk stood empty, a stroke of luck. The night guard must be making rounds. Ravenna moved quickly, her wet sneakers squeaking against the marble floor as she sought a corner where she might remain unnoticed until morning. That's when she saw it. A grand piano positioned near floor-to-ceiling windows that showcased lightning illuminating the Chicago skyline. For a moment, she forgot her circumstances. Before Camden Powell had systematically dismantled her life, before he'd frozen her accounts and falsified evidence that destroyed her teaching career, before she'd lost everything, she had been a musician. Ravenna glanced around the deserted lobby once more before approaching the piano. Her fingers trembled as she lifted the fallboard. One song. She would allow herself one moment of normality before returning to her harsh reality. From the shadows of the executive elevator, Archer Blackwood watched the bedraggled woman sit at his mother's piano. He should call security. Instead, he found himself frozen as her fingers touched the keys. The first notes of Chopin's Nocturne in E-flat major floated through the lobby. Despite her obvious exhaustion, her playing carried an undercurrent of raw emotion that struck him physically. Archer leaned against the wall, transfixed. It had been 15 years since he'd allowed himself to really listen to piano music, not since his mother had played this very piece the night before the accident. "Sir." The security guard's voice shattered the moment. "Should I remove her?" The woman's hands jerked from the keys as her head snapped toward them, her eyes wide with fear. "No." Archer's voice came out rougher than intended. He stepped from the shadows, his tailored suit a stark contrast to her soaked appearance. Ravenna stood quickly, her heart hammering. "I'm sorry. I'll leave immediately. You're homeless." Not a question. Recently. She lifted her chin, meeting his gaze with unexpected dignity. Archer studied her. Even drenched and desperate, something in her posture spoke of resilience. Her accent was educated, her manner refined despite her circumstances. "Intriguing. You play beautifully." He approached, noting how she tensed at his proximity. "Where did you study?" "Juilliard." "Before?" She gestured vaguely at herself, leaving the rest unsaid. "Before what?" Ravenna's lips tightened. "Before I discovered how quickly a life can unravel when the wrong person decides to destroy it." Something in her words resonated with him. Archer made decisions based on logic, not impulse. Yet something about this woman's music had broken through his carefully constructed walls. "I need an assistant." The words left his mouth before he'd fully formed the thought. She blinked. "Excuse me. You need somewhere to stay?" "I need an assistant who isn't intimidated by me." He pulled a business card from his pocket. "Archer Blackwood. This is my building." "The Archer Blackwood? The Wolf of Chicago?" Recognition dawned in her eyes. "The media's nickname, not mine." He handed her the card. "The position includes accommodation in my penthouse." Ravenna stepped back. "That's inappropriate. It's business. Separate living quarters, professional boundaries." His voice cooled. "I'm offering employment, not propositioning you." "Why would you offer a job to someone you found trespassing?" "I make decisions based on instinct." "You're educated, clearly intelligent, and desperate enough not to waste my time with office politics." He checked his watch. "Do you have a better option tonight?" Ravenna thought of the underpass where she'd spent the previous night, the leering men who had discovered her before dawn. Her narrowing options as Camden's reach seemed to extend everywhere. What exactly would this job entail? Managing my schedule, correspondence, travel arrangements. Being available when needed. And the accommodation? The penthouse has a separate guest suite. It's yours during employment. Ravenna hesitated. Everything about this screamed danger, and yet, why would you trust a stranger in your home? Archer's expression remained impassive. "I don't. You'll be thoroughly vetted. But I trust my judgment of character, and I need someone immediately." Thunder crashed outside as if punctuating his statement. Ravenna looked toward the storm-lashed windows, then back at the imposing man before her. "I'm Ravenna Thorne. And yes, I accept." She extended her hand, aware of how it trembled slightly. When Archer took it, the contact sent an unexpected current through both of them. His eyes narrowed slightly, the only indication he'd felt it too. Sinclair will be displeased, he murmured, almost to himself. Sinclair, my sister. She believes I need to show more humanity. The irony that she'll object to this particular display of it isn't lost on me. He gestured toward the executive elevator. We'll start the paperwork tonight. As the elevator doors closed behind them, Ravenna caught her reflection in the polished metal, soaked, pale, with shadows under her eyes. Beside her stood Archer Blackwood, Chicago's most ruthless billionaire, impeccably dressed and utterly unreadable. What had she just agreed to? In his pocket, Archer's phone vibrated. A text from his CFO, Dominic Vance. Powell's team has made another move. We need to discuss immediately. Archer silenced his phone without responding. Camden Powell, the corporate attorney whose name kept appearing in connection with their competitors' recent aggressive acquisitions, could wait until morning. Right now, he was more interested in discovering how Ravenna Thorne, a Juilliard-trained musician, had ended up playing his mother's piano in the middle of a storm, and why her music had broken through 15 years of carefully constructed emotional defenses. This is absurd, Archer. Even for you. Sinclair Blackwood paced the penthouse living room, her designer heels clicking against the marble floor. Through the floor-to-ceiling windows, dawn was breaking over the Chicago skyline. You brought a complete stranger, a homeless woman, into your home based on what? Her piano playing. Archer continued reviewing the background check results on his tablet. She's in the guest suite shower, not roaming freely with the family silver. That's not the point, and you know it. Sinclair stopped pacing. At 29, she shared her brother's sharp features and penetrating gray eyes, though she'd never adopted his emotional detachment. What do you actually know about her? Ravenna Thorne, 25. Bachelor's and master's from Juilliard. Former music teacher at Westlake Academy until 8 months ago. Archer scrolled through the preliminary report. No criminal record. Credit history was excellent until recently. And that doesn't raise flags? It raises questions, Archer corrected. Which is why I've ordered a comprehensive background investigation. Sinclair dropped onto the sofa. This isn't like you. You interrogate potential employees for weeks. You once rejected a CFO candidate because his tie was polyester. That would have been Dominic, and I hired him anyway, after making him buy new ties. Sinclair studied her brother. There's something you're not telling me. Archer set down his tablet. She played Mom's Nocturne. Sinclair's expression softened. Archer, I'm not being sentimental. I'm being practical. I need an assistant. She needs a job. The elevator chimed, announcing Preston's arrival. The head of security entered, his expression grim. What did you find? Archer asked. Enough red flags to decorate Red Square. Preston handed over a folder. Miss Thorne's fall from grace wasn't accidental. Her ex-husband orchestrated it. Ex-husband. Sinclair raised an eyebrow. Camden Powell. Archer's head snapped up. The corporate attorney? From Meridian Technologies? Preston nodded. They married 3 years ago after she taught piano to his niece. Divorced 11 months ago. Since then, her life has systematically unraveled. Lost her teaching position due to accusations of inappropriate behavior with students. All charges were eventually dropped, but the damage was done. Her accounts were frozen during legal proceedings that mysteriously kept extending. Restraining orders filed against former colleagues who tried to help her. How does this connect to Camden Powell being Meridian's attorney? Archer's voice had taken on a dangerous edge. Unknown, but interesting timing. Powell joined Meridian's legal team shortly after their divorce finalization. Sinclair and Archer exchanged looks. Meridian has been attempting to acquire our neural interface division for months, Archer said quietly. Preston cleared his throat. There's more. I found this in an encrypted file. He pulled out a photograph. Recognized the man on the right immediately. Archer stared at the image of Camden Powell shaking hands with his CFO, Dominic Vance. The timestamp showed 3 weeks ago. Your employee vetting protocol needs revision, Preston said dryly. Footsteps in the hallway silenced them. Ravenna appeared, wearing clothes Sinclair's assistant had delivered, simple jeans and a sweater that were still far more elegant than anything she'd owned recently. Her damp hair was pulled back, revealing high cheekbones and clear gray eyes that took in the suddenly quiet room. I'm interrupting, she said, starting to retreat. No, stay. Archer gestured to an empty chair. We were discussing your employment details. Ravenna sat carefully, her posture revealing classical training. I appreciate the opportunity, but I need to be clear about something. If this position involves anything compromising, I'll leave immediately. Sinclair's eyebrows shot up. The position is exactly as described, Archer replied coolly. Professional boundaries will be maintained. Then I have one question, Ravenna said. Why me? You don't know me. Archer studied her, weighing how much to reveal. Let's just say we might share a common adversary. Understanding flickered in Ravenna's eyes. You know who I am. I know Camden Powell is your ex-husband. I know he systematically dismantled your life. And I know he's currently working for my main competitor. Ravenna's hands trembled slightly before she clasped them in her lap. Then you should know I'm a liability. Camden has powerful connections. Anyone associated with me becomes a target. I'm not easily intimidated, Miss Thorne. Neither was I once. Her voice was barely audible. Sinclair leaned forward. What exactly did he do to you? Ravenna's gaze dropped to her hands. The sleeve of her sweater pulled back, revealing a thin scar across her wrist. She quickly tugged the fabric down. Let's just say when Camden Powell decides to destroy someone, he's thorough. She looked up, eyes now hard. First, he isolates you. Then he takes everything you value. Then he makes sure you can never rebuild. Yet here you are, Archer observed. A ghost of a smile touched her lips. I'm stubborn. Good. You'll need to be. Archer stood. The position pays $120,000 annually, plus benefits. The suite is yours as part of your compensation. Preston will arrange security protocols and identification. Sinclair will ensure you have appropriate attire for corporate functions. I haven't officially accepted yet, Ravenna pointed out. Archer regarded her with faint amusement. Haven't you? Their eyes locked in silent challenge until Ravenna finally nodded. When do I start? You already have. He handed her a tablet. My schedule for today? First meeting is in 1 hour. You'll attend with me. After Ravenna left to prepare, Sinclair turned to her brother. You realize you've just made yourself Camden Powell's next target? No, Archer replied, watching the door where Ravenna had disappeared. I've just acquired his first failure. Later that morning, Ravenna stood beside Archer in the executive elevator, trying to appear composed despite her churning thoughts. She'd spent months hiding from Camden, yet now found herself aligned with one of his business adversaries. Either the smartest or stupidest decision of her life. You're quiet, Archer observed. Processing. Yesterday I was homeless. Today I'm the assistant to Chicago's most feared CEO. Most feared is an exaggeration. His tone was dry. I'm merely respected. With healthy caution. The Wall Street Journal called you pathologically ruthless. An improvement from their previous assessment of soulless automaton, he replied, surprising her with a hint of humor. The elevator opened directly onto the executive floor. As they stepped out, Ravenna noticed how employees straightened at Archer's approach, their expressions shifting to careful neutrality. A stylishly dressed woman intercepted them. Mr. Blackwood, Dominic requested a moment before the board meeting. Jennifer, meet Ravenna Thorne, my new personal assistant. Archer's tone made it clear no explanations would be forthcoming. Ms. Thorne, Jennifer manages the executive floor. Jennifer's professional smile didn't reach her eyes as she assessed Ravenna. How unexpected. What firm were you with previously? Before Ravenna could answer, a man approached, expensively dressed, with the practiced charm of someone who believed in his own importance. Archer, we need to discuss the Meridian situation before. He stopped abruptly, seeing Ravenna. Dominic Vance, my CFO, Archer said to Ravenna. Dominic, this is Ms. Thorne, my new assistant. Recognition flashed in Dominic's eyes so quickly Ravenna almost missed it. But it was there. He knew exactly who she was. How interesting. Dominic's smile was all teeth. Welcome to Blackwood Tech, Ms. Thorne. I'm sure you'll find it educational. As they continued toward the boardroom, Ravenna felt a chill that had nothing to do with the building's temperature. Dominic Vance knew her connection to Camden, which meant Archer had just placed her in the Viper's nest. And from the calculating look in Archer's eyes, that was precisely his intention. 2 weeks into her new position, Ravenna had established a routine. Her days revolved around Archer's relentless schedule, meetings, conference calls, and the constant flow of decisions that kept Blackwood Tech at the forefront of technological innovation. She'd learned to anticipate his needs, from having reports prepared before he requested them to knowing when to reschedule appointments when he needed uninterrupted work time. What she hadn't learned was how to read the man himself. "You're staring again," Archer said without looking up from his computer. Ravenna blinked, caught. "I was waiting for you to finish that email so I could brief you on the Hansen proposal." "Multitask. I can listen while I type." She began summarizing the venture capital proposal, watching as his fingers continued moving across the keyboard. His ability to process multiple information streams simultaneously was unnerving. "Their projections seem optimistic," she concluded. "They're not. They're deliberately understated to appear more attractive when they inevitably exceed them." Archer finally looked up. "What's your assessment?" The question surprised her. "You're asking my opinion on a business matter? You've reviewed the same materials I have. You have a master's degree and clearly process information efficiently. Why wouldn't I ask? Because I'm your assistant, not your business advisor. In my experience, artificial limitations on roles are inefficient." He leaned back. "So, your assessment?" Ravenna hesitated only briefly. "Their technology is promising, but their leadership team lacks stability. 3 executive changes in 18 months suggest internal conflicts. I'd proceed with caution." A ghost of a smile touched his lips. "Exactly my conclusion. Set up a meeting, but push it 2 weeks. Let's see if their CTO still remains by then." As she made notes, Archer's phone chimed. His expression didn't change as he read the message, but something in his posture shifted subtly. "Clear my evening schedule," he said abruptly. "Including the dinner with the Japanese investors? Especially that. Sinclair can handle them." He stood. "I'll be working from home. You can leave at 5. Ravenna watched him gather his things with unusual haste. Something had disrupted his typically immovable composure. "Is everything all right?" "Fine." His tone discouraged further questions. "Tomorrow's Singapore conference call. Prepare the usual briefing." After he left, Ravenna finished rearranging his schedule, then checked the time. Only 3:30. With unexpected free time, she decided to return to the penthouse early. Despite living there for 2 weeks, she'd had little opportunity to explore. Archer worked late most nights, and she'd been careful to maintain professional boundaries by keeping to her suite when they were both home. The penthouse occupied the top 2 floors of Blackwood Tower. Her suite was spacious and elegantly appointed, but clearly designed for guests. Beautiful, but impersonal. The main living areas were similarly minimalist, all sleek lines and subdued colors. The whole space felt more like a luxury hotel than a home. Except for one room she hadn't yet entered, the door across from the library that always remained closed. Ravenna had just made herself tea when she heard the elevator arrive. Archer wasn't due home for hours. Setting down her cup, she moved cautiously toward the foyer. Archer strode in, his tie loosened, carrying a small wooden box. He stopped abruptly when he saw her. "I thought you'd stay at the office. You said I could leave at 5. She gestured to her watch. "It's after 4. Right." He seemed distracted, almost awkward, so unlike his usual self that Ravenna stared. "Today is. I have some personal matters to attend to. Of course, I'll stay in my suite." "That's not." He stopped, visibly collecting himself. "Today would have been my mother's birthday." The unexpected confession hung in the air between them. "I'm sorry," Ravenna said softly. "Were you close?" Something flashed in his eyes, pain, quickly masked. "She was extraordinary. My father built the company, but my mother built our family." He looked down at the box in his hands. "She was a concert pianist before she married." Understanding dawned. The piano in the lobby. It was hers. He hesitated, then made a decision. "Come with me." He led her to the closed door she'd wondered about. When he opened it, Ravenna's breath caught. The room was a stark contrast to the rest of the penthouse. Warm woods, rich fabrics, and at its center, a magnificent Steinway grand piano. But what truly stunned her were the walls, covered with instruments from around the world. Antique violins, ornate sitars, hand-carved flutes. "My mother collected them," Archer said, watching her reaction. She believed music was the universal language. Ravenna moved to a glass case containing what appeared to be a 17th-century lute. "This collection is museum-worthy. Many museums have made offers." He placed the wooden box on a side table. "I've declined them all. You maintain it perfectly." She noted the careful climate control, the perfect lighting. "My mother's legacy deserves preservation." His voice was carefully neutral, but Ravenna sensed the depth of emotion beneath. She approached the piano, her fingers hovering above the keys without touching them. "May I?" After a moment's hesitation, he nodded. Ravenna sat, adjusting the bench, then began to play, not the dramatic Chopin he'd heard before, but something gentler, Debussy's Clair de Lune. The notes floated through the room, filling the space with delicate emotion. She played with her eyes closed, letting the music speak what words couldn't. When she finished, silence settled around them like a physical presence. She loved Debussy, Archer said quietly. That was one of her favorites. Ravenna looked up to find him watching her with an expression she couldn't decipher. Thank you for sharing this room with me, she said. He moved to the box he'd brought, opening it to reveal an antique music box. This was hers. I take it out every year on her birthday. When he wound it, a simple melody played. Mozart's 12 variations on A Vue de un Man. Twinkle, twinkle, little star, Ravenna smiled. But in its classical form. She played it for us as children. For the first time, his mask slipped completely, revealing the depth of his loss. After their accident, I closed this room for years. Couldn't bear to hear music. But you preserved it perfectly. Sinclair insisted. Said someday I'd want it again. He closed the music box. She was right, though I've never told her so. The moment of vulnerability between them felt dangerous, crossing the careful boundaries they'd established. Ravenna stood. I should let you have your privacy. Actually, he said, surprising her. Would you join me for dinner? Not as my assistant. Just conversation. The request seemed to surprise him as much as her. Ravenna hesitated, aware of how easily such boundaries could blur. I'd like that, she finally said. They ate on the terrace as sunset painted the Chicago skyline in fiery hues. Archer spoke of his parents, of growing up with Sinclair, of inheriting a company at 17 while still grieving their loss. Ravenna shared stories of her own childhood, her mother's encouragement of her musical talents, her father's death when she was 12, her scholarship to Juilliard. She carefully avoided any mention of Camden until Archer asked directly, How did someone like you end up with Camden Powell? Ravenna's fingers tightened on her wine glass. I was teaching his niece piano. He was charming, attentive, seemed to admire my independence. She gave a bitter laugh. I later realized he saw it as a challenge to overcome, not a quality to respect. When did things change? Gradually, then suddenly. First, he encouraged me to quit teaching to focus on more important things. Then suggested my friends were using me. Classic isolation tactics I was too naive to recognize. Her voice hardened. By the time I found documents linking him to financial fraud involving Meridian Technologies, I had no one left. What did you do? Confronted him. Biggest mistake of my life. She unconsciously touched her wrist where the scar remained. When I threatened to expose him, he destroyed me first. False accusations, frozen accounts, manipulated evidence. My word against one of Chicago's most connected attorneys. Archer's expression darkened. And no one helped you? A few tried. They quickly faced their own problems, audits, lawsuits, professional complaints. People learned to stay away. She met his gaze directly, which is why your offer was both salvation and terrifying. Being near me has consequences. I'm not easily intimidated. Neither was I once. She set down her glass. Whatever game you're playing with Camden by hiring me, be careful. He's more dangerous than you realize. Archer studied her for a long moment. I don't play games, Ravenna. I win wars. The intensity in his voice should have frightened her. Instead, she felt an unwelcome flutter of attraction. Dangerous territory. I should turn in, she said, standing. Thank you for dinner. And for sharing your mother's room. At her door, she paused. Archer, whatever happened between you and Camden before I arrived, be careful. Don't underestimate what he'll do to win. His expression softened fractionally. Good night, Ravenna. As her door closed, Archer returned to the terrace, staring out at the city lights. His phone buzzed with a message from Preston. Powell spotted with Vance again. Surveillance photos attached. He opened the attachment, studying the image of his CFO with Camden Powell. The location was a private club in New York, the same day Dominic had supposedly been meeting Blackwood tech investors. Archer's expression hardened. The pieces were falling into place. Camden's systematic destruction of Ravenna. Dominic's unexplained meetings. Meridian's increasingly aggressive acquisition attempts. He'd been right to trust his instincts about Ravenna Thorne. She wasn't just a talented musician who'd fallen on hard times. She was the key to understanding what Camden Powell was planning. And perhaps much more, whispered a voice he'd long suppressed, a voice that had awakened the moment she'd played her first notes on his mother's piano. "You look different," Jennifer observed as Ravenna organized documents for the afternoon board meeting. The executive assistant's tone suggested this wasn't a compliment. Ravenna continued working without looking up. After 6 weeks at Blackwood Tech, she'd grown accustomed to the sidelong glances and whispered comments. The mysterious assistant who'd appeared from nowhere and now rarely left the CEO's side was fodder for endless speculation. "New dress," Ravenna replied neutrally. "Sinclair's suggestion for tonight's charity gala." "Ah yes, the Children's Hospital fundraiser." Jennifer leaned against Ravenna's desk. "Quite the honor to attend with Mr. Blackwood. He usually goes alone." The implication hung in the air. Ravenna finally looked up. "I'm attending in a professional capacity. Mr. Blackwood has 3 potential investors to meet there." "Of course." Jennifer's smile didn't reach her eyes. "Just unusual, especially since Dominic mentioned you have connections to certain Blackwood Tech competitors." Ravenna's fingers stilled on the keyboard. "Dominic Vance doesn't know anything about me, doesn't he? He seemed quite informed about your history with Camden Powell." Before Ravenna could respond, Archer emerged from his office. Jennifer straightened immediately. "The Q3 projections," he said to Ravenna, seemingly oblivious to the tension. "Did Preston deliver them?" "Yes, they're in your secure folder." "And Dr. Ramsey called about the neural interface prototype. There's been a breakthrough. Schedule a meeting for tomorrow." He checked his watch. "The car leaves at 7 for the gala. Business formal." After he disappeared back into his office, Jennifer's smile turned smug. "Business formal. How appropriate." Ravenna waited until Jennifer left before allowing her composure to crack. Dominic was talking about her connection to Camden, which meant her presence at Blackwood Tech wasn't as discreet as Archer had promised. The charity gala was held at the Chicago Art Institute, its grand staircase illuminated by thousands of tiny lights. Ravenna stepped out of the limousine behind Archer, grateful for Sinclair's fashion guidance. The midnight blue gown was elegant without being flashy, appropriate for an executive assistant at a business event. "Remember," Archer murmured as they ascended the stairs, "Senator Phillips wants to discuss tech regulation. Steer him to me after his second drink, when he's more receptive. The Nakamura Group should be directed to Sinclair. They'll respond better to her approach for the Asian market's expansion. And the Westlake Foundation representatives? Keep them occupied until I've finished with Phillips. They're potential donors for our STEM education initiative, but they're also fishing for acquisition information." Ravenna nodded, mentally cataloging the instructions. Despite the personal evolution of their relationship since the night in his mother's music room, at functions like these, their dynamic was strictly professional. Inside, Chicago's elite circulated beneath sparkling chandeliers. Ravenna recognized faces from business magazines and news programs. Archer was immediately surrounded, leaving her to navigate the crowd alone. She was observing Senator Phillips when a familiar voice froze her in place. "Ravenna Thorne. I'd heard rumors, but I couldn't believe them until now." She turned slowly, facing a man with kind eyes and a hesitant smile. Wesley Hammond. Her former colleague from the conservatory days looked exactly as she remembered, slightly rumpled despite his expensive suit, his expression open and genuine. "It's been over a year," he said softly. "You disappeared. I had reasons." Her voice was tight with emotion she couldn't quite suppress. "I know." Camden made sure everyone knew his version of events. Wesley stepped closer. "Some of us never believed him. Yet no one came looking." Pain flashed across his face. "I tried. Your number was disconnected. Your apartment emptied. Then my tenure review suddenly faced irregularities. My credit score mysteriously plummeted." He hesitated. "Camden made it clear what happened to people who asked about you." Ravenna's anger faltered. "I'm sorry. I never wanted anyone else hurt." "What happened to you?" "There were rumors you'd—" He stopped, eyes dropping to her wrist where her scar was concealed by a bracelet. "Nearly succeeded." She kept her voice even with effort. "Rock bottom has a way of clarifying what matters. And now you work for Archer Blackwood?" His expression turned concerned. "Ravenna, do you know what you've gotten yourself into?" "That man is my employer," she interrupted firmly. "And he's been fair to me." Wesley lowered his voice. "He's also Camden's newest target. Blackwood Tech's Neural Interface Division is what Meridian has been after for months. I've been researching the connection for Sinclair Blackwood. Ravenna stared. You work for Sinclair? As a consultant. She hired me to investigate financial irregularities she suspected in the company. She's worried someone inside is helping Meridian. Dominic Vance, Ravenna whispered. Wesley nodded. We've been tracking his meetings with Camden. But there's more. He glanced around before continuing. Camden has an unusual interest in the Blackwood family tragedy. He's been collecting information about the car accident that killed Archer's parents. Cold dread settled in Ravenna's stomach. Why? I don't know yet. But Sinclair thinks. There you are. Dominic Vance's smooth voice interrupted them. Miss Thorne, aren't you supposed to be attending to Archer rather than reconnecting with old friends? Wesley stiffened beside her. Mr. Hammond and I were just catching up, Ravenna replied coolly. Dominic's smile was reptilian. How convenient that you happen to find each other here. Almost as if it were planned. Pure coincidence, Wesley said. Few things are coincidental when it comes to Camden Powell's former wife appearing in Archer Blackwood's company. Dominic's eyes hardened. Some might call it corporate espionage. That's enough, Dominic. Archer materialized beside them, his expression glacial. Ravenna hadn't noticed him approaching. Mr. Hammond, Archer acknowledged. I understand you've been doing excellent work for my sister. Wesley blinked in surprise. You know about that? Sinclair and I don't keep secrets from each other. His gaze shifted to Dominic. Unlike some of my executives. Dominic's confident smile faltered. I was just expressing concern about potential conflicts of interest. Your concern is noted. Archer's tone made it clear the discussion was over. Senator Phillips is looking for you. Something about the financials for the Tokyo expansion. After Dominic reluctantly departed, Archer turned to Wesley. What information were you sharing with Miss Thorne? Archer, Ravenna began. It's not what I asked, Mr. Hammond. Wesley straightened. I was informing her that Camden Powell has been investigating your parents' accident. It seems relevant given her position in your household. Archer's expression didn't change, but Ravenna noticed the slight tightening of his jaw. And why would Powell care about a 15-year-old tragedy? That's what we're trying to determine, Wesley replied. But given his connection to Dominic Vance and his systematic destruction of Ravenna's life, I thought she should be warned. The orchestra began playing, momentarily drawing the attention of nearby guests. Archer used the distraction to move them to a quieter corner. How much have you uncovered about Dominic's activities? He asked Wesley. Enough to know he's been feeding information to Meridian for months. Not enough yet for legal action. Sinclair wanted concrete evidence before bringing it to you. My sister has always been thorough. Archer's gaze shifted to Ravenna. Did you know about this investigation? No, she answered honestly. I had no idea Wesley was working with Sinclair. A photographer approached, camera raised. Archer subtly positioned himself between the camera and Ravenna. Mr. Hammond, I'd like you to continue your research, he said quietly. Focus on any connection between Powell and my parents' accident. Report directly to me. Wesley nodded. There's one more thing. Camden has been asking about Ravenna's whereabouts. Specifically, Ravenna felt cold despite the crowded room. He knows I'm with Blackwood Tech? Not yet, as far as we can tell. But he's looking, and given his connection to Dominic. It's only a matter of time, Archer finished. His hand moved to Ravenna's elbow, the touch light but protective. We should return to the main event before our absence is noted. Mr. Hammond, we'll continue this discussion through more secure channels. As they walked away, Ravenna whispered, You didn't tell me Sinclair was investigating Dominic. You didn't need to know. If Camden is investigating your family tragedy, I absolutely needed to know. Her voice remained low but intense. He doesn't do anything without purpose. Archer guided her toward a less crowded area. My parents' accident was thoroughly investigated. There was nothing suspicious. Then why is Camden interested? And why keep Sinclair's investigation from me? I keep many things from many people, Ravenna. It's how I've survived in this world. And how many of those things put me at risk? Her eyes flashed with rare anger. I trusted you with my safety. Something shifted in his expression, a softening almost imperceptible to anyone who didn't know him well. You are safe. I would never knowingly put you in danger. The sincerity in his voice surprised her. Before she could respond, camera flashes erupted nearby. A familiar figure was making an entrance at the top of the grand staircase. Camden Powell, immaculately dressed and smiling confidently, surveyed the room like a predator assessing prey. When his gaze landed on Archer and Ravenna, His smile faltered for just a moment, long enough for Ravenna to know he recognized her. Her blood turned to ice. He's seen me. Archer's hand moved to the small of her back, steadying her. Stay calm. You're under my protection now. You don't understand, she whispered, unable to tear her gaze from her ex-husband. No one is protected from Camden when he wants something. As if hearing her, Camden raised his champagne glass in their direction, his smile now restored to its predatory perfection. The message was clear. The game had changed, and he was ready to play. Archer's voice was steel in her ear. Let him try to harm you now. He'll learn what real power is. But as Ravenna watched Camden begin to work the room, charming everyone in his path, she wasn't comforted. Camden's presence tonight wasn't coincidence. He'd known she would be here, which meant someone had told him. Someone close to Archer. The aspen sky darkened as snow fell in thick, silent sheets. Through the floor-to-ceiling windows of Archer's secluded mountain retreat, Ravenna watched the approaching blizzard with growing apprehension. How bad will it get? She asked, clutching her tablet as if it might somehow connect them back to civilization. Archer studied the weather radar on his phone. Bad enough. We're already cut off. Roads are closed, and the helicopter won't fly in these conditions. It had been 3 weeks since the charity gala where Camden had seen her. 3 weeks of increasing tension at Blackwood Tech as Ravenna felt eyes following her constantly. Archer had insisted on this trip to Aspen for critical meetings with potential investors for their neural interface technology. Now they were stranded. The investors? She asked, ever the professional assistant despite their predicament. Rescheduled. They never made it out of Denver. He pocketed his phone. We have plenty of supplies, a generator, and satellite communications if needed. We'll be fine. The cabin was hardly roughing it. A modern architectural marvel of glass and stone nestled among snow-covered pines, its luxury barely concealed by its rustic exterior. I've alerted Sinclair and security about our situation, Archer added, moving to build a fire in the massive stone fireplace. Preston will monitor things at headquarters. Ravenna set down her tablet. You don't seem concerned about being stranded. I've been trapped in worse places with worse company. A rare hint of humor colored his voice. As evening deepened, they settled into an unexpected domesticity. Archer prepared steaks while Ravenna assembled a salad, moving around each other in the kitchen with surprising ease. With business temporarily on hold and escape impossible, the walls between employer and employee began to thin. After dinner, they sat before the fire, snow continuing to fall outside, insulating them from the world. Ravenna sipped her wine, watching Archer stare into the flames, his usual mask of control softened by the firelight. Tell me about your parents, she said softly. Not the corporate history or the public story. Tell me about them as people. Archer was silent, so long she thought he might not answer. My father was brilliant but distracted, he finally said. Always 3 steps ahead in a conversation while forgetting what he'd had for breakfast. My mother was his opposite, present, attentive, grounded in emotion rather than logic. They sound complementary. They were perfect together. His voice held rarely displayed emotion. She filled his practical gaps. He encouraged her dreams. When I was 10, he built her a recording studio so she could capture her compositions. She wrote music for him, complex mathematical patterns translated into sound. What happened? The night of the accident. Archer swirled his whiskey. They were returning from a charity event, similar to the gala where Camden saw you. Their car went off Mountain Pass Road during a rainstorm. His voice flattened. They died instantly. I was 17. Sinclair was 12. And you took over everything. There was no one else. The board wanted to sell the company. I refused. Ravenna studied his profile, understanding washing over her. You gave up your own dreams. I never had the luxury of dreams after that night. He met her gaze. I became what the company needed, decisive, strategic, unemotional. The Wolf of Chicago. A ghost of a smile touched his lips. A ridiculous moniker that served its purpose. And Sinclair. I made sure she had choices I never did. College, travel, exploration. Pride softened his features. She's the better Blackwood. Brilliant without being cold. Strong without being harsh. You're not as cold as you pretend to be, Ravenna said quietly. The atmosphere between them shifted, something unspoken hovering in the air. Archer set down his glass. Your turn. Tell me what you didn't tell me about Camden. Ravenna tensed. What do you mean? Wesley's investigation uncovered bank transfers before your marriage. Camden was already connected to Meridian Technologies when he met you. She looked away. I discovered that too late. After we were married, I found documents linking him to industrial espionage, selling technological innovations from his clients to competitors. When I confronted him, her hand unconsciously moved to her scarred wrist. He hurt you. Not physically. Camden's violence is psychological. He convinced me I was delusional, paranoid. When I threatened to go to the authorities, he destroyed my reputation first, created evidence of misconduct with students, froze our accounts for my protection during my mental health crisis. Bitterness crept into her voice. By the time I realized what was happening, no one believed me. I had nowhere to turn. So you tried to end it. Her eyes met his, unflinching. My lowest moment. I woke up in a psychiatric hospital where Camden had placed me under a 72-hour hold. When I was released, everything was gone. My job, my home, my credibility. He'd won. Yet you survived. Barely. Living in shelters, taking odd jobs for cash. Camden's reach seemed endless. Anyone who helped me soon regretted it. Until you played my mother's piano, Archer said softly. Something changed in the space between them. A recognition that their damaged souls somehow complemented each other. When Archer moved closer, Ravenna didn't retreat. His hand cupped her face with unexpected gentleness. I never expected you, he murmured. Their lips met in a kiss that began softly, tentatively, then deepened with unleashed emotion. Ravenna's hands gripped his shoulders as his arms encircled her, pulling her closer. When they finally separated, breathless, Ravenna whispered, "This complicates everything." Everything was already complicated, Archer replied, stroking her hair back from her face. This is perhaps the only simple truth between us. As the blizzard howled outside, they surrendered to feelings both had denied for weeks, finding in each other's arms a shelter more secure than any fortress of stone and glass. The Chicago skyline welcomed them back with indifferent splendor as their helicopter descended toward Blackwood Tower. 3 days in Aspen had transformed Ravenna and Archer's relationship from professional to deeply personal, but reality awaited. "Ready?" Archer asked as the rotor slowed. Ravenna nodded, slipping easily back into her assistant persona. They had agreed to maintain professional appearances at work despite their evolving relationship. Preston met them at the helipad, his typically stoic expression unusually tense. "Welcome back, sir. There are developments requiring your immediate attention." In Archer's office, Preston placed a folder on the desk. Dominic called an emergency board meeting yesterday. He presented projections suggesting the neural interface division is hemorrhaging money and proposed selling it to cut losses. Archer's expression hardened. On what authority? As CFO, he has access to the financials. He presented data showing failed trials and technical setbacks unknown to other departments. Falsified data, Archer said flatly. Preston nodded. Almost certainly, but convincing enough to worry the board. They've scheduled a vote for Friday on whether to entertain acquisition offers. From Meridian Technologies, I assume. Their bid arrived this morning. Apparently, they've been preparing it for weeks. Ravenna watched Archer's face, recognizing the cold calculation that had earned him his predatory nickname. "Camden," she said quietly. "Indeed." Archer turned to his security monitor. "Show me the surveillance on Dominic for the past month." As Preston pulled up the files, Sinclair burst into the office. "You're back. Thank God. Dominic's making a play for control with some board members. I've been trying to slow things down until..." She stopped, seeing Ravenna. "Oh, hello. Miss Thorne is fully briefed on the situation," Archer said smoothly. "Continue." Sinclair hesitated only briefly. "I've uncovered evidence that Dominic has been altering R&D reports. The neural interface trials were actually successful, but he doctored the data to make them appear failed." "Why now?" Ravenna asked. "What triggered this move?" "This." Preston pulled up a news article on the monitor. The headline read, "Blackwood Tech announces breakthrough in neural interface technology." Dr. Ramsey's team published preliminary results without clearing it through PR, Sinclair explained. "It forced their hand. They need to move before our stock price reflects the breakthrough." Archer's phone chimed with a message. He glanced at it, his expression darkening further. "The Times wants a comment on my relationship with my assistant." Ravenna stiffened. "What?" He turned the phone to show her a grainy photo. them embracing at the Aspen property, clearly taken with a long-range lens despite the supposed privacy of the location. Tabloid garbage, Sinclair dismissed, then registered their expressions. Unless. Focus on the immediate crisis. Archer cut her off. Has Wesley made progress on Camden's interest in our parents' accident? Some. He's found that Camden was a junior attorney at the firm that represented the driver who hit your parents. His name doesn't appear on official documents, but he was on the case. That can't be coincidence, Ravenna said. A knock interrupted them. Jennifer appeared at the door. Mr. Vance requests an urgent meeting, and Mr. Hammond is here to see Ms. Blackwood. Send in Hammond, Archer ordered. Tell Dominic I'll see him at 3. Wesley entered looking harried, a tablet clutched in his hand. He stopped short seeing the assembled group. I have information for Ms. Blackwood, but perhaps. We're all aware of your investigation, Archer said. Report. Wesley glanced at Ravenna, then nodded. I've been tracking Camden's movements and communications. Yesterday, he met with 3 board members at his club. The ones who've suddenly aligned with Dominic, Sinclair confirmed. There's more. Wesley handed the tablet to Sinclair. These photos were taken outside the Peninsula Hotel this morning. The group gathered around the screen. The images showed Ravenna and Wesley in what appeared to be an intense conversation. That's from 2 weeks ago, Ravenna protested. When we ran into each other after you left the office. I know, Wesley said grimly. But the Chicago Tribune received them today, dated this morning, with a tip that you've been passing company information to me as Camden's intermediary. A heavy silence fell over the room. The narrative writes itself, Preston said. Ravenna, supposedly Camden's bitter ex-wife, actually working with him to infiltrate Blackwood Tech. Her relationship with Archer, a manipulation to gain his trust while feeding information to competitors. That's absurd, Ravenna said, but dread filled her stomach. No one would believe. People believe what confirms their suspicions. Archer interrupted, his voice unervingly calm. Dominic has been laying this groundwork for weeks. My assistant, appearing from nowhere with connections to our competitor, now apparently caught sharing information with an outside consultant. I can explain those photos, Wesley insisted. Ravenna was warning me about Camden's interest in your family. We met openly, in public. Perception matters more than truth in situations like this, Preston said. Archer's expression had turned to stone as he studied the photos. The warmth Ravenna had experienced in Aspen seemed to have evaporated completely. Archer, she began, you can't possibly think. I need to speak with Miss Thorne alone. He cut her off, his voice glacial. After the others reluctantly departed, silence stretched between them. Ravenna felt physically ill seeing the suspicion in his eyes. You can't believe I would betray you, she finally said. What I believe is irrelevant. The evidence creates a narrative that will convince the board, shareholders, and the public. Evidence manufactured by Camden and Dominic. You know me, Archer. After everything we've shared. Do I know you? His voice was dangerously quiet. Or did I simply see what I wanted to see? The words struck like physical blows. After Aspen, how can you doubt? Aspen was an emotional indulgence I can't afford. His face was unreadable. You're suspended pending investigation. Security will escort you to collect your things. Archer, please. It's done, Miss Thorne. He pressed the intercom. Preston, please escort Miss Thorne from the building. Her access is revoked effective immediately. As Preston appeared at the door, Ravenna stared at Archer, tears threatening. Camden wins again, she whispered. Because you're too afraid to trust. His expression never changed as she was led away. Rain pelted Chicago as Ravenna huddled in a corner booth at an obscure diner in the city's outskirts. 3 days had passed since her humiliating escort from Blackwood Tower. 3 days of unanswered messages to Archer. Her hotel room, the cheapest she could find with her dwindling savings, felt like a prison cell. The bell above the door jingled. Sinclair Blackwood entered, scanning the nearly empty restaurant before spotting Ravenna. She slid into the booth, her designer coat incongruous against the worn vinyl. You're taking a risk meeting me, Ravenna said. I excel at risk assessment. Sinclair studied her with calculating eyes so similar to her brother's. You look terrible. Being branded a corporate spy does that. Are you? Ravenna met her gaze steadily. No, but you knew that before you came. Sinclair nodded, satisfied. Archer's made a catastrophic error. Pride and fear are a dangerous combination. He believes I betrayed him. No, he fears he misjudged you, which terrifies him more than actual betrayal. Sinclair leaned forward. Archer hasn't trusted anyone since our parents died. Then you arrived, breaking through barriers even I couldn't penetrate. And now he shut me out completely. Self-preservation. If he admits he was wrong about you, he must face how deeply you affected him. Sinclair slid a phone across the table. Burner. Untraceable. Wesley will contact you on it. He's found something. About Camden's connection to your parents? Yes. And about the falsified reports Dominic presented to the board. We need your help. Ravenna hesitated. Archer made his position clear. My brother is brilliant but occasionally stupid, Sinclair replied dryly. Help me save him from himself. Hours later, Ravenna met Wesley at an all-night cafe near Northwestern University. He arrived looking over his shoulder, clutching his laptop bag. I'm being followed, he said without preamble. Camden's people. They know I'm digging. What did you find? He opened his laptop, keeping his voice low. Camden wasn't just at the law firm that handled your parents' accident case. He was instrumental in suppressing evidence. He turned the screen to show scanned documents. The official report concluded mechanical failure caused by weather conditions. But there was a preliminary finding, never included in the final report, that suggested brake tampering. Murder, Ravenna whispered. Camden ensured that evidence disappeared. Wesley pulled up another document. And 12 years later, he represented Meridian in their first attempt to acquire Blackwood Tech. That can't be coincidence. It gets worse. Look at the Meridian executive team back then. Ravenna scanned the image, freezing when she recognized a younger Dominic Vance listed as financial controller. Dominic worked for Meridian? Before Archer hired him 3 years ago. His Blackwood Tech employment application omitted that detail. Ravenna's mind raced. They've been playing the long game. Camden and Dominic. But why? What's so valuable about the neural interface technology? It's not just technology. Wesley pulled up technical specifications. Blackwood's neural interface has military applications. Whoever controls it potentially influences national security contracts worth billions. We need to get this to Archer immediately. Wesley shook his head. Camden is moving faster than we anticipated. The board vote has been moved to tomorrow morning. And there's more. He hesitated. Threatening messages were sent from your email account to Archer. What? I haven't even accessed my email. Camden has resources. Digital impersonation is child's play for him. Ravenna's phone, the burner from Sinclair, buzzed with a text. Proof Dominic falsified reports. Meeting you at the cafe. 20 minutes later, Sinclair still hadn't arrived. Ravenna's uneasiness grew with each passing minute. Something's wrong, she finally said. Sinclair's never late. As if on cue, the burner phone rang. Hello, Ravenna. Camden's smooth voice sent ice through her veins. Your concern for Sinclair is touching. She's quite safe, for now. Ravenna gripped the phone. What have you done? Simply accelerated our timeline. Ms. Blackwood was carrying some rather damaging evidence against my associate Dominic. I couldn't allow that to reach Archer before tomorrow's vote. Where is she? Secure. And she'll remain that way if you cooperate. Bring everything Wesley has uncovered to the old Meridian warehouse on the south side. Come alone. How do I know Sinclair is alive? A pause, then Sinclair's voice. Ravenna, don't. The call disconnected. Wesley's face had drained of color. He's got Sinclair? This is insanity. We need to call the police. And tell them what? That the respected attorney Camden Powell kidnapped the sister of one of Chicago's most powerful businessmen? With what proof? Ravenna stood. I need to go. It's a trap, Wesley protested. He'll silence both of you. Not if I go, but you take everything to Archer. She held his gaze. Make him listen, Wesley. Show him this evidence plus whatever Sinclair found. You can't face Camden alone. I've done it before. Her hand unconsciously touched her scarred wrist. The difference is, this time I have nothing left to lose. Rain had turned to freezing drizzle by the time Ravenna reached the abandoned warehouse district. The crumbling Meridian facility loomed against the night sky, most windows broken, its faded logo barely visible. As she approached the rusted side door, her phone buzzed one final time. A message from an unknown number, Archer's private line. Where are you? Wesley showed me everything. Don't approach Camden alone. Too late, she thought, pocketing the phone and pushing open the heavy door. Inside, Emergency lights cast eerie shadows across empty space once filled with manufacturing equipment. "I'm here, Camden," she called, her voice echoing. "Where's Sinclair?" From the darkness, Camden Powell emerged, impeccably dressed as always, his smile unchanged from their marriage. "Ravenna, you're still so predictably noble. It's why I chose you in the first place." "Where is Sinclair?" Ravenna demanded, scanning the shadowy warehouse for any sign of Archer's sister. Camden's smile never wavered. "Safe. Unlike you. I want to see her before I give you anything. You're hardly in a position to negotiate." Camden gestured to a metal chair. "Sit. We have much to discuss before your night in Armani arrives." Ravenna remained standing. "This ends tonight, Camden. Whatever you're planning." "Quite the contrary. Tonight is merely the culmination of 15 years of planning." He circled her slowly. "Did you know I met Eleanor Blackwood once? Brilliant, beautiful woman. She rejected me, of course. Chose Richard Blackwood instead. What does that have to do with anything?" "Everything." His voice hardened. "She humiliated me publicly at a charity event. 1 month later, she was dead." Realization dawned with horrifying clarity. "You killed them." "I arranged an unfortunate accident." Camden shrugged. "And then I waited, planning each step. Meridian's acquisition attempts. Placing Dominic in Blackwood Tech. Even meeting you, the perfect unwitting accomplice. I was never your accomplice." "No, but you were meant to be. Your position at Juilliard, your musical talent so reminiscent of Eleanor's. It made you the perfect bait for Archer Blackwood." His smile turned cruel. "I underestimated your integrity and your resilience." A sound from the darkness caught Ravenna's attention, movement behind a stack of crates. Sinclair, bound to a chair, her eyes wide with warning. "The Blackwood siblings," Camden continued, "have proved more challenging than anticipated. But after tomorrow's board vote, their parents' legacy will be dismantled. Poetic justice." "You won't get away with this," Ravenna said, stalling for time. "Wesley has evidence linking you to the accident and to Dominic's fraud. Evidence that disappeared with his laptop an hour ago." Camden checked his watch. "My associates are quite thorough. Not thorough enough." Archer's voice rang out from the shadows. "You should have checked for backups, Camden." Archer stepped into the dim light, his expression coldly furious. Preston and 2 security officers flanked him. Camden's composure faltered momentarily. How convenient. The whole Blackwood entourage. Plus the FBI, Preston added as agents swarmed through the doors. Camden reached inside his jacket. Ravenna, anticipating his movement, grabbed a nearby pipe and swung it at his arm. The gun clattered across the concrete floor as Camden howled in pain. In the ensuing chaos, Ravenna ran to Sinclair, frantically working to untie her bonds. "You came," Sinclair whispered as the restraints fell away. "Of course I did." Ravenna helped her stand. "You're family now, aren't you?" Across the warehouse, federal agents handcuffed Camden while others secured the scene. Archer approached slowly, his eyes never leaving Ravenna's face. "You shouldn't have come alone," he said, voice rough with emotion. "You shouldn't have doubted me." Her chin lifted defiantly. They stared at each other, the air between them charged with unspoken words, until Sinclair broke the tension. "For God's sake, you two. Enough." She pushed Archer forward. "Apologize properly, so we can all go home." Archer took Ravenna's hands. "I was wrong. Afraid. When those photos surfaced, I reverted to distrust because it was safer than facing what losing you would mean." "And what would it mean?" Ravenna challenged. "Everything." He pulled her into his arms. "You are everything." 1 year later, sunlight streamed through the newly redesigned penthouse as guests mingled at the official launch of the Blackwood Foundation. The space had been transformed. Warmer colors, comfortable furnishings, and Eleanor Blackwood's piano now prominently displayed in the living area. "Quite the success," Wesley said, joining Ravenna by the windows. His new position as the Foundation's research director had brought unexpected joy, including his blossoming relationship with Sinclair. "Beyond our expectations," Ravenna agreed. 12 shelters funded, 3 rehabilitation centers opened, and the legal aid program for domestic abuse survivors is already overwhelmed with cases. Below, Chicago spread before them. The Blackwood Tower now housing not just corporate offices, but the Foundation's extensive operations, created to help those who, like Ravenna, had faced seemingly insurmountable destruction of their lives. Dominic Vance had accepted a plea deal, providing testimony against Camden in exchange for reduced charges. Camden himself was awaiting trial on multiple felony counts, including conspiracy to commit murder and corporate espionage. Archer approached, sliding his arm around Ravenna's waist. The neural interface demonstration was a success. Pentagon representatives are impressed. Does that mean we can finally take that vacation you've been promising? She teased. 2 weeks in Italy. Already arranged. He kissed her temple. Though technically it's a working vacation. Milan's symphony wants you to perform. Since rejoining the music world under her reclaimed professional reputation, Ravenna had begun performing and teaching again, balancing her artistic rebirth with her role in the foundation. As evening fell, the guests departed, leaving only family, Sinclair, Wesley, and Preston with his wife. Archer nodded to Sinclair, who smiled secretively and ushered everyone toward the terrace, leaving Ravenna alone with Archer. He guided her to the piano. "Play something for me." She sat, fingers hovering over the keys. "Any requests?" "The Nocturne, the one you played the night we met." Ravenna began to play, the familiar Chopin melody filling the space between them. Halfway through, she noticed Archer had placed a small velvet box on the piano. Her fingers faltered on the keys. "Don't stop," he murmured. "Finish the piece." She continued playing, though her heart raced. When the final notes faded, she turned to find Archer kneeling beside the bench. "Ravenna Thorne," he said, taking her hands. "You melted the ice around my heart when I believed nothing could. Will you marry me?" Tears blurred her vision as she nodded. "Yes, always yes." As he slipped the ring onto her finger, a sapphire surrounded by diamonds, Sinclair and the others applauded from the doorway. Later, after champagne and celebrations, Ravenna stood on the terrace with Archer, the Chicago lights sparkling below them like earthbound stars. "Did you ever imagine this outcome when you found me playing your mother's piano?" she asked. "Never." His arms tightened around her. "I was looking for an assistant. I found my soul, and I was seeking shelter from a storm." She turned in his embrace, meeting his gaze. "I found my home." Their lips met as the city glowed beneath them. Two broken souls who had found in each other not just healing, but a symphony of redemption that would play on for a lifetime.